Nothing will change unless we have the guts to take on Wall Street, the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the military-industrial complex, and the fossil fuel industry.
It is not good enough to talk about great ideas. They're important. But nothing happens unless people look around them and say, you know what, this status quo is not working. It's not just, it's not right, it's not fair. And I want you to think about this. Think about real change in America.
We cannot go back to the old ways. We have got to go forward with a new and progressive agenda.
The labor movement was created when millions of workers stood up and said, you know what, you're going to treat us with dignity and respect. We're going to have collective bargaining. It wasn't somebody on the top who made that decision. The civil rights movement did not occur because somebody in the White House said, you know, maybe we'll allow African Americans in the South to vote. Maybe we'll end segregation. I think it's a great idea. That's not how it happened. It happened when millions of people stood up and said, we will no longer accept racism and segregation in America.
I am proud to stand with the working families of our country, prepared to take on the powerful special interest. That is what I did yesterday. That is what I did 25 years ago. That is what I'll do tomorrow. I come from the working class of this country. I will be damned if we will allow the Republican Party, whose job is to represent the rich and the powerful, to win the votes of working class Americans.
Welcome to your My Bernie Story workshop. We're so excited that you all are here. In this video, we're going to tell you about one of the best ways to convince your friends, family members, and even complete strangers to support Bernie Sanders for president by sharing your story of what a Bernie Sanders presidency would mean for you and connecting with them about what's important to them.
Together, we'll go over why your story matters for the political revolution and explain how you can share it strategically to help Bernie win. But first, let's review our strategy to make Bernie Sanders the Democratic nominee for president. Some of this will be familiar, but some of it is new information. First, let's go over the rules of the game. To win the Democratic nomination, Bernie will need to win a majority of pledged delegates when they vote at the Democratic National Convention next July in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There will be an estimated 3,979 pledged delegates, which are awarded when each state holds its primary or caucus. That's why our strategy is to win as many states and delegates as early as possible. You might think that the biggest states with the most delegates are the most important, but actually, it's the earliest states that are the most important. Who wins early on will shape the entire race, who has momentum and who gets winnowed out. So our goal before any voting or caucusing begins is to make sure that Bernie wins early on. That's why we're asking all of our volunteers everywhere around the country to help us win early states. The first state to hold a primary contest is Iowa. The Iowa caucus is February 3rd. A week later is the New Hampshire primary. The Nevada caucus and the South Carolina primary are also held in February. And we have a lot of states voting on March 3rd, also known as Super Tuesday. Alabama, American Samoa, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia. By March 4th, after Super Tuesday's over, more than 40% of pledged delegates will already have been awarded. That means we might already have a frontrunner, or the field might have dropped down to just a few top candidates. Our goal collectively is to make sure that Bernie is in as strong of a position as possible by that pivotal point, which means we need everyone, no matter where you are, to help us win big in all of those early states that I just mentioned.
Let's talk about how we're going to win in all of those states. There are literally millions of people out there who share our values but who don't yet support Bernie. How are we going to convince them to not just support Bernie, but to turn out to vote for him? Well, study after study confirms that the best way to persuade people is by having personal, one-on-one conversations. That's why the most important thing you can do to help us win, besides donating to our campaign, is having conversations with people about Bernie. We're going to ask you to talk to people you know, especially if you live in an early state or if you know people who live in an early state. When someone knows and trusts you, they are much more likely to listen to you and take your recommendation. So if you know a lot of people in an early state or multiple early states, talking to people in your own personal network might be the best way that you can support our movement. But if you don't know people in an early state, or if you run out of people you know to talk to, that's okay too. Because we're also gonna ask you to talk to people you don't know by knocking on doors and making phone calls with us.
Okay, so let's review. Our strategy to elect Bernie involves winning as many states and delegates as early as possible. That's how we're going to build the momentum to keep winning and make Bernie our Democratic nominee and ultimately the next president. We're going to win those early states by having personal conversations with people. There are two types of conversations you can have. Ones with people you know, which are most effective if you already know people in the early states, and conversations with people you don't know, which can take place through knocking on doors or making phone calls into early states. Now, as I'm sure we all know, talking to friends and family and strangers about politics and the political revolution can be tricky and even a little scary, especially when we're talking to people who are not yet Bernie supporters. If you're nervous about talking to others about Bernie, that is totally normal. But don't worry, because in the rest of this video, we're going to prepare you for having those powerful conversations by outlining the single most effective way to have real quality conversations with voters. And that is personal storytelling.
We know that over the course of this election, we're gonna have to have literally millions of conversations with literally millions of people who may be on the fence about Bernie, or even about voting. We root our strategy in personal storytelling because a lot of research has confirmed that this works. Research has shown that when two people enter an argument or a debate, both parties usually come out more committed to their prior beliefs than before. In other words, rational debate is not an effective tool for persuasion. That's why, instead of arguing, we always come back to sharing our own stories and motivations. Think about it. I'm sure most of us have gotten into heated arguments with a family member or a friend, maybe during Thanksgiving or another family event. I know I have. And you may have walked away from that conversation feeling more flustered and sure about your own original position. This is exactly what we want to avoid.
On the other hand, scientists have found that people are only open to being persuaded if they feel like they are not being judged and if they feel like they are sincerely being listened to. That is why the goal of every conversation we have with friends, family members, and strangers is actually empathy and understanding, not contentious debate. When we share our personal stories authentically, we are modeling vulnerability for the person we're talking to. And we open the door for others to resonate with our motivations and change their minds. People want to feel heard, and right now, too many people in our society don't have anyone listening to them. Too many people are struggling alone with problems that we should all confront together. By sharing our stories, we are inviting others to relate to our experiences, giving them permission to share their own stories, and creating an opportunity to make them feel heard, understood, and possibly less alone. We're also grounding our conversations about this election in the direct consequences it will have for real people, for you and for the person you're talking to. So our approach is really simple. All of us have a story to tell, and all of us can be empathetic and understanding. Building our movement on authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy is how we will win. Before we share some tips on how to tell your story and our big coordinated day of action on November 25th at 12 p.m. Eastern, we'll watch a few examples, starting with Senator Bernie Sanders.
My mother's dream was that someday our family would move out of that rent-controlled apartment to a home of our own. That dream was never fulfilled. She died young while we still lived in that rent-controlled apartment. My experience as a child living in a family that struggled economically powerfully influenced my life and my values. I know where I came from. And that is something I will never forget. Unlike Donald Trump, who shut down the government and left 800,000 federal employees without income to pay their bills, I know what it's like to be in a family that lives paycheck to paycheck. I did not have a father who gave me millions of dollars to build luxury skyscrapers, casinos, and country clubs. I did not come from a family that gave me a $200,000 allowance every year beginning at the age of 3. As I recall, my allowance was 25 cents a week. I had something more valuable. I had the role model of a father who had unbelievable courage in journeying across an ocean with no money in his pocket to start a new and better life. I did not come from a family of privilege that prepared me to entertain people on television by telling workers, "You're fired." I came from a family who knew all too well the frightening power employers can have over everyday workers. This is what I believe from the bottom of my heart. If we stand together, believing in justice and human dignity, believing in love and compassion, if we stand together, brothers and sisters, the future of this country is extraordinary, and there is nothing we will not be able to accomplish.
That's one of my favorite videos from Bernie. It's so powerful because it's honest and authentic to who he is. Now, we're gonna watch 2 more examples of personal stories from our supporters, and afterwards, you'll have time to discuss them with your group.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a 21-year-old college student from Arizona, and I have a disability. I live with chronic pain every day of my life due to an accident that occurred 3 years ago. During my time in the hospital, my medical bills accrued to over $1 million. But I was lucky enough to be fully covered by insurance. Therefore, my family only had to pay $50,000 out of pocket. For far too long in this country, people have been discriminated against for having illnesses and injuries out of their control, used to make a profit off of. And I say no more. And this is why I stand with Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. This is why I stand with Bernie Sanders' message of it's not me, but us. If Medicare for All was implemented, millions of lives would change so that we could invest into our futures and invest ourselves back into society and into our country. To feel like we also can achieve the American dream. Thank you, Bernie Sanders, for running for president. Thank you for giving me hope again.
My name is Eric Manning II, and I believe in Bernie Sanders for health reform and criminal justice. I believe in Bernie because a personal story to my heart was I have an uncle who was in jail for doing drugs. That is a struggle that is big in the African American community. And he got the help he needed in prison. But unfortunately, when he got out, after he did his rehab and his time, he wasn't able to find a good job that provided health care. So he got forced to take a job with a contracting company that could not provide health care for him. He got hurt on the job, ruptured a disc in his back, and he couldn't afford the surgery or pain medication. He ended up relapsing on drugs and winding back up in jail. So that's why I believe in Bernie Sanders, because he wants to fix that. He doesn't believe that once you do a crime, you should continue to pay for the rest of your life until you die. But no, once you do your time, once you pay your fine, your fee, once you give back what you took away from society, you should be able to be put back into society and become a productive member, because it's called the correctional institution. And unfortunately, they've lost their way when it comes to correcting and reforming the population to help benefit the people. That is why I believe in Bernie Sanders.
Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. It's really exciting to imagine thousands of Bernie supporters armed with their personal stories, having persuasive conversations all over the country. Now, I'm going to show you how to send them out into the world. We want you to record your story as a video and share them in your networks. Remember, we're all going to share our videos with our friends once we make them. And then on November 25th at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're going to share our stories on social media with the hashtag #MyBernieStory so that people everywhere can learn about what a Bernie presidency would do for all of us. Please pull out your phones and open up the BERN app. The BERN app is an incredible tool you should use to organize the people in your personal networks. And we want you to record your My Bernie story in the app. You should have downloaded the BERN app earlier, but if you didn't, please open up the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, search for it, and download it right now. It's also a web-based app, so if you don't have any more memory on your phone, you can visit app.berniesanders.com. Either way, please take out your phone and pull up the BERN app right now. Okay, so once you have BERN, you need to create an account, which means entering your email and password. When you're on the homepage, you'll see a section called Record My Bernie Story. If you click on that section, you'll be prompted to record or upload your video. We have teams of people who approve your videos, so please make sure it's not too long, that it's not disparaging of other candidates, and that it's family friendly. If you've already recorded your video, all you have to do is click on the My Profile section in the upper right corner to see your video or re-record it. If you're happy with your video, then that's great. You can send it out using the tools I'm about to show you. If not, you can go home and re-record it over the next few days. After you record your story in the app, I'm going to show you the most effective way to send it out. On the homepage of BERN, you will see a section called Survey My Friends About Bernie. Click that section, and you will be taken to a new page with a unique survey link. The link goes directly to a special survey that we're asking you to send to your friends so we can learn how they're feeling about the election. Once you've recorded your video story, and after you submit your video, it will appear on your BERN survey after our approval process, which should take no more than a day. When your friend opens the link, they'll see your video and beneath it, your survey. This will make your conversations with friends even more powerful. When someone completes your survey, they're added to your friend list in BERN. From there, the campaign will help you organize your friends for Bernie and the revolution. We call this digital canvassing. Just like how we knock on doors to talk to voters, we want to talk to our friends and family as well. In fact, we are much more likely to persuade a friend or family member to support Bernie than we are a stranger. If you have any questions about BERN or recording your My Bernie story, refer to our FAQ page or email info@berniesanders.com.
Believe it or not, there are people in your life who are looking to you for guidance on how to vote, like your friends, your family members, your classmates, fellow union and congregation members, and coworkers. When people see your Bernie story, they will see you being vulnerable and honest, and it will tap into the human empathy that we talked about earlier. So it's really important for you to share your video around so that so many people can see it. This video is for your friends, family, and your community. If they prefer another language besides English, and if you're bilingual, you should record that video in the language that the majority of your community will understand and resonate with. In fact, there are so many ways you can use your Bernie story to get your friends off the fence about the election. You can tell your story in person to people you know who may or may not support Bernie, or you can use your story whenever you're talking with undecided voters. You can use it in conversation when talking to people you don't know, like when you're door-to-door canvassing, phone banking, or simply having a conversation with a stranger. You can also share your story on social media using the hashtag #MyBernieStory as a video or just a post. But remember, the most effective way you can share it is using BERN and that personal survey link. As soon as your video is approved, which should happen in less than 24 hours, we want you to share your survey with friends and family members. Then on November 25th at 12 p.m. Eastern, Monday before Thanksgiving, and when millions of people will be coming together with their friends and family, we want our entire movement to share their personal survey link with the hashtag #MyBernieStory. We're gonna show the world what Not Me, Us is all about.
Hi, my name is Charlie, and I live in California. I come from an immigrant military household, and I'm an Air Force veteran. For the time I served, before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, well, that's what I did. Not once did I reveal my truth while maintaining the utmost professionalism. As a gay man of color seeking the smallest amount of self-worth, I hated myself, thinking that I had been inconsistent with the values that the military is supposed to represent. Values that I really wanted to believe in and uphold, like integrity and honor. I've lost amazing friends, some to suicide and drug abuse, those confronting their internal struggles that queer people all too often face alone. I have since used the GI Bill to graduate from UCLA, learning history and about Bernie's relentless advocacy for civil rights, the LGBT community, and veterans literally since before I was born has had such a profound impact on me. He's always seen people like me, even when I didn't see myself. His unwavering recognition of our equality, our humanity, extends throughout his policies to pioneer social, economic, and environmental justice. He is a leader of unrivaled integrity. Bernie consistently fights for our human rights, regardless of our identities. That is why it is my duty to fight alongside him for Medicare for all, education for all, the Equality Act, and the Green New Deal, allowing us to confront the immense challenges of today, together. Read and digest all his policies, let me know what inspires or concerns you, and we'll discuss how we can go about creating a better world. There's so much to do, so please join us to defend our values and defeat hatred, inside and out. Vote for Bernie, and let's usher in a humane future we can truly believe in.
Hi, my name is Ara, and I'm a 17-year-old high school senior in Florida. As an Iranian woman, I grew up marginalized in an early 2000s America. The impact of 9/11 on my family is indescribable, and to this day I still feel trepidatious at airport security checks, at which I am often randomly selected for extra screening, and I cringe at every newspaper headline that involves Iran and the possibility of war. While a glaring issue to many Middle Eastern minorities, especially to those like me who have family displaced in these countries, virtually no presidential candidates have directly and diplomatically addressed this issue. However, Bernie stands apart from the crowd. He believes the US must lead the world in improving international cooperation through foreign policy solutions that maintain peace as opposed to violent interventions overseas. That is why Bernie Sanders is campaigning to rejoin the Iran nuclear agreement and resume diplomatic peace talks with Iran on a range of other issues. If Bernie is elected, the next generation of Americans will not be drawn into and initiate another catastrophic, endless war that denies equitable recognition of ethnic identity and destroys the lives of millions worldwide. That is why I'm supporting Bernie Sanders in the upcoming 2020 presidential election when I vote for the very first time. If you agree that the United States should enact responsible, comprehensive foreign policy that values international cooperation over ceaseless, imperialist war, I invite you to join our campaign. If you are unsure about journey in the election, let's talk. Understanding begins with conversation, and transforming this country will take all of us.
Hi friends, my name is Jay. I'm a truck driver from St. Paul, and making this video from my office in my truck, where I spend most of my days. The Bernie campaign has asked for supporters to create videos as to why we support Bernie, and I thought it was time to step up and work at getting Bernie elected. Now, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent, and I didn't support Bernie in 2016, and I really wish I had. And the reason I support Bernie is he gives me hope, and I haven't had hope about what's happening in Washington in a very, very long time. And I think there's change coming, and it's going to come one of two ways. We can elect an agent of change like Bernie, or it can come through crisis. And I'd rather that we participate in it rather than it having it happen to us. And I'll be the first to admit that Bernie's not perfect, but I don't need him to be perfect. I just need him to start the change that's really needed in Washington. And I truly believe he's the one that can do that. He's been consistent his whole career, and I think what you see is what you get. And for what it's worth, it's my opinion. I hope you'll join me and the rest of Bernie supporters as we go forward. We've got 15 months to the general election, and we've got a generational opportunity here to make a change. So go Bernie, and I hope you join us.